Someone just mentioned in the comment section, where's the red and the green lines for local and fringe. So I went looking because you got to remember I did this years ago, DXing. So I went. Radio Locator is still around. Radiolocator.com. Now you come up on it. It'll come to a page and it'll ask you for the coordinates of the station or the call letters. The easiest thing is put the call letters in the little box. You hit the return, and on this page there'll be a little grayish box down at the bottom, and it says like daytime coverage area and nighttime coverage. And I would suggest you put WABC New York in there, and you'll get to see how they can twist or how they can move the coverage area to get Long Island. Just so you understand that a big, good power station, a blowtorch station like WABC, they have 3 towers, and by changing the phasing between the 3 towers, they can put out different shapes of coverage. So you may be close to that station, but you really can't get it that well because they're aiming their power in other areas. And that ABC is a typical example of a blowtorch station. That's WABC in New York. Just put WABC in when you get radiolocator.com and then select daytime or nighttime. Notice the pattern. And I also want to tell you this Sony Walkman radio. I think it's got a number. It's SRF-59. And I showed you this once before, this radio. And this Kmart sold this radio. This radio uses special IFs, very low frequency IFs. Instead of 455, it's lower. Go read up on this radio. People have taken it out of the case and mounted the parts. They're trying to get by the crappy dial, but this radio is a DX machine, and it's got a small ferrite rod in there, but the amount of gain in the circuitry makes up for the smaller rod. See, that's what you got to understand. Older radios had a really large ferrite rod and a transistorized amplified front end, and that does work really well. And then later on, they went from regular transistors to a FET. And the FET works even better, but only tiny amounts. Then it comes along this radio, which also does FM, and they changed the IF frequency so they can run it higher gain. So the ferrite rod is smaller, but they're able to push the radio to its limits. And there's people that just DX with this thing, and because you can take it everywhere you go. And if you went on a camping trip up in the mountain, this thing would pull in distance stations for you, just like the bigger radios I showed you. That's why I collected it. Someone wrote an article on it, more than one, and then I just happened to walk over to Kmart. I had a Kmart over here when I first got here, and there it was, and it was marked down $7.99. I don't know. In the article, the guy says they're discontinuing them or whatever in different stores. For under $10, I'll give it a shot. It does work extremely well. But the tuning mechanism is a strap with notches. You go look at what's inside of this thing. One more time with the number, SRF-59, Sony. All right, go look at what's inside. You're like, holy cow, that works. Yes, it does work that well. And that's why, and DXing, as I told you, you could hold a crappy portable transistor radio in your hand, and you could actually copy DX. And it's because of the atmospheric conditions. But the people that are in the hobby, like myself, we want a radio that'll do fringe during the day. It's not DX, it's just a station that's further out. Now, when you use radiolocator.com, it doesn't use just two circles, and they're not circles. When I did the video, I kept it simple, right? It has local circle and shows the coverage, who would get it. Then it's got distant, all right, and then fringe. And that's for the people that understand that sometimes the station is pushing the power a different way. So you could be in a null of WABC. Behind a mountain, in a null, you won't get it. A null is, go look at the pattern, and then there's a spot where it isn't, the signal isn't, and you're in a null. And that's possible too. And if you're behind a mountain, you're not going to get the station. Now, other people that are in direct line of the signal behind a mountain, they're going to get it. There's a lot involved. And one of the things I always do with a radio is I go up and down the band. When I first get the radio, I got a whole closet full of AM broadcast radios, just the AM band only. And there's certain stations I know here that when you power the radio up, you go look and see how well it pulls them in. And then you know, and that's during the day. And if you watch Shango, he does the same thing. After he repairs a radio, he knows what stations, if the radio is good, he can pick up. Go watch him. He does the same thing. Then he also goes out into the desert, and he shows the different radios, and he says this one works slightly better. Go watch it. It's really interesting. And that he's actually doing at night. He's doing, I wouldn't say it's DX. It's actually fringe at night. Fringe at night, the fringe area gets bigger at night. All right, so it's not really DX. It's just fringe got bigger, because if you put the radio on and it'll stay on for 2 hours without fading in or out, that's fringe. You have a really sensitive radio. And that's what you have to understand. DX is, you're sitting in your car early in the morning waiting to get into work. They haven't opened up yet. And you're going up and down the dial on the AM broadcast band. And you come upon a station that's in California, and you're in New Jersey. And then you notice if they mention the call letters, which ours are, Eastern is W's and Western is K. So I would sit in my car and I'd hear K something, and I had a pencil and paper in the glove box. I immediately get it out and I write it down, what I heard. And then I'd go home. I had this book, and I think it was a Howard Sand publication. If you dig around, you'll find all these old books online. And it's it was the frequency guide for television, AM and FM. And my dad bought me one of the books, probably at Food Fair. That's how many years ago it was. And it had a book rack there. And he saw this book, he brought home. He knew I was AM DXing. So he gave me this book. And every night I would go on a different frequency. And then I'd mark the 3 stations I could get with the box loop. Right? I told you, if you make a box loop or you use the Radio Shack DX radio, long distance radio, when you turn it on a frequency, you might get 3 stations in different directions. So you go in that frequency with the book and you put a little line next to each frequency. And then other nights you try to work it. And I'd also put like northwest, yeah, northeast. And that was telling me which way the box loop was facing. And then some nights you might pick up a 4th station. And then you have clear stations. You're on a frequency, and there's nobody in the United States using that frequency. There might be Canada. It could be Barbados off the Atlantic Ocean, down near Cuba, I believe that is. And I could get those stations because it's U.S. and Canadian clear. There's so much involved in the hobby, but the thing is, you can stream any one of those stations. But that's not what the hobby was. And the reason there was a hobby was near Christmas time. Picture this. The best time to DX is wintertime. Well, what happens at wintertime? Well, after Thanksgiving, all your TV shows become reruns. So you got a period from, say, Thanksgiving to January. Let me make sure this is still recording. All right, so from Thanksgiving until January, the TV shows are all reruns. And there was no DVDs. All right, so I'd go up to my room upstairs. I had a big 4-foot box loop antenna, and I would listen to stations from other states. and they all played. Each station was its own entity. There were no networks. There were networks for the news. They would subscribe to ABC News or whatever, and when they break for news, you would hear the WABC ABC News Network jingle, and it'd be the same news you got from a New York station, even though it was Tennessee or I that. But later on, these iHeart, I think, was one of them. They all started buying up radio stations, and they all put the same crap on every day at the same time. And that's not what it was like. We had television. We had three main channels: WCBS, WNBC, and WABC. And then later on, Fox showed up. So back when I was younger, during a certain time of the year, which was the best DX time, I would then go and either listen to shortwave, which every country had a transmitter, and you could listen to the two Bobs from Radio Swiss International. Yeah, it was a whole different world back then. There were no cell phones. If somebody wanted to call you up, they called you on a regular landline telephone. And after a certain time at night, after 8 o'clock at night, nobody called you. Right? It was that simple. So from 8 o'clock at night, it was dark. You go up to your room, you put your shortwave radio on or your AM radio, and you DX. You go looking for stations that are skipping in. And what's really hilarious was just as they're going to identify, you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Just as they're going to tell you what the station call letters are, it fades out. I can't tell you how many times it does it. It's amazing. You know, it's like you're in the Matrix and you got a bad luck streak going. Anyway, Radio Locator is still there. There was another one, and it only did the local and the fringe. Radio Locator does local, distant, and fringe, and that's when you know. You look at it. Where are you? Are you in a null? Are you on the thing? Because remember I was talking about the null with the television station, radio channel 29 out of Philly. I got all the stations on the same tower, but 29. And I thought maybe I'm in a null, but the other three channels worked perfectly. The other three channels were less power. So I wrote the engineer of the station, and he answered me, and he says, I have a transmitter over by me for something else that's on that frequency, and that's knocking the station out. But I know how to use all these reference materials on the internet. And over the years, stuff has disappeared. Now, that book I recommended the other day, and you go through it, it's got the nulling capabilities with using the coil. And you pick up a strong station on the coil, and then you null it out. And then what happens, you can then pick up other stations on that same frequency. All right? So I recommended it. I didn't realize that the FET circuit I wanted to show you was also in that book. And everybody was making that thing. And I made it, and I made a little set of plans to make this thing. It was called UGTENA, and nobody wanted it. Because so many people had the same. You could go on eBay and buy an antenna. Now they sell you this rod that's got a tuning cap on it. It's not amplified, but the hobby is still around. See, what happened was cell phones have wiped out so many different things. People just don't do those. Us weirdo cool stuff is gone. Nerdy people. Before we were called nerds. We would be brainiacs, and we'd go home, and I'm telling people at the lunch table at high school, and they just look at me with glazed eyes. I told you my father got me started by driving around with the car with the KBW Buffalo on. What did I say, it was 1520? Yeah. Anyway, so then I got into it. I wasn't listening to the stations from New Jersey. I would listen to the Grand Ole Opry and other stuff. And then one day they were talking about a hockey game. In 1970, people were starting to get into hockey. And I said, I don't know if it was 600 AM out of Canada or 800 AM, but they would have the hockey games on. And when New York would play, I think they were the Rangers. I have to think about this stuff. It's all in my head. And I said, when they play against Canada, yeah, it's on the radio. Yeah, it's on the radio. Go up around the dial about 800. See, they know about 77 WABC. but nobody ever moved the dial to any other station. I said, just move the dial up to 800, and you'll hear the hockey game. You know, the dum, 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 and the crowd noise. When you hit 800, I think it was 800, when you hit it, you know right away you're on the hockey game. It's time for the hockey game. None of the networks in New Jersey in New Jersey carried it, or New York, because it's a Canadian hockey game. But the New York Rangers are playing. I think they were the New York Rangers. I think Jersey had one too, right? Anyway, and my friends come in the next day. You know, I turned the radio up to 800, and the game was on, and they didn't realize it was actually coming from Canada. You know, the glazed eyes. When you start explaining something to somebody, and the same thing, you're at a wedding and you're telling people you're getting free movies through the air, WHT. And I'm telling people, and they're just glazed eyes because they don't understand that somebody would send movies through the air scrambled, and I had built a decoder and I was getting the movies. And they knew about HBO, but they couldn't afford HBO. So little by little, kits came out, people were building the units, and then they understood. But by that time, after about 4 years, WHT started losing money, and they pulled the plug. And these people bought a real box for that kind of system from California because they went out of business. So they all bought these boxes, and they turned them on. They were getting WHT. Well, then WHT went out of business. They shut off the transmitter, and these people thought I could fix the box to make it. Oh, they're stupid idiots. But anyway, there's so much involved in radio, and there's so much to learn, and so much is gone because, let me make sure this is recording. So much is cell phones. All right. Now I always have batteries that EMI loop, whatever they are. I have those. I charge up. I use them for my. I have atomic clocks in the house, and they really eat batteries. So I switch to these EMI loops. Anyway, so I always have a box of batteries that have just been charged, and I also have regular batteries, and I have multiple radios. So